because it's in the interest of viruses to evolve so they're more transmissible. It's not in the interest of virus to evolve so they're more deadly, because that way they kill off the population they need to inhabit, to
they
replicate.
tend to weaken over time.
They weaken. And these vaccines are, from everything I can see, pretty amazing. But here's what I'm curious about, because I just can't get my mind around it. It seems quite obvious to me you should get a vaccine. Better safe than sorry. If you get the vaccine, you don't have to wear those bloody masks so much. You don't have to worry so much. So why, especially on the right, has this become so I read people I used to think were sane. I will never get the vaccine. This is tyranny. Why? I honestly have a hard time wrapping my mind around it.
I can't quite understand. I mean, one of the things you hear constantly is the invocation of the word freedom, of personal freedom. And of course, that anybody who understands, the general concept or the sort of libertarian idea of it understands that, what is the extreme libertarian position on government? It's the night watchman state, right? I mean, you should have somebody that protects you against foreign invaders and protects you against your own citizens who want to rob you and hurt you. And there's some element of that in it. I mean, the vaccine prevents you from getting it and spreading it. Now, these breakthrough cases change that a bit. We don't know how much. I mean, I'm going to wait and see on this one. But if you are spreading this virus, that is not a personal freedom issue. It is not my body, my choice, because your body is then affecting another body. Well, they can get the vaccine. Sure, they can get the vaccine, but there was a point where there was no vaccine and people were still against masks and making this argument. So it's not entirely, I mean, I think it's a slightly disingenuous argument to say that, this is because we choose to be a population apart. And now, look, I'm kind of trying to figure out what I think about these media stories, where it's kind of like the regret porn / death porn of people on their deathbed saying, I wish I had gotten the vaccine. And I mean, you know what I have to say to that, honestly? This is horrible. Yeah, you should have. That's too bad. Should have worn your seatbelt. You shouldn't have smoked 700 rocks of crack. I mean, I only have a very shallow reservoir of sympathy for people who know that there's an alternative, but for some bizarro, clannish, tribal, ideological reason, decide not to get it. Well, we don't know what's going to happen down the line. Well, people make these arguments all the time. I mean, you probably see that I'm occasionally huffing on this little vape thing because it prevents me and has prevented me for a long time from smoking cigarettes. But they've made all of these moves, the FDA, et cetera, saying, we don't know what's going to happen down the line. We don't know. And as one doctor told me, if every single person in the world quit smoking cigarettes and started doing that, we'd save millions of lives every year, right? We don't know what's going to happen down the road. Well, what we do know about vaccines is that if they're bad for you, you tend to find out at the beginning. You tend to find out very quickly. They don't kind of incubate for 10 years and then kill you later. But you're probably going to die anyway if you're 150,000 pounds overweight, have type 7 diabetes, and, I don't understand the rationale here, but I was very happy to read your piece that I, was hoping somebody would read, which was, let her rip. I mean, we're doing our part. You're not? Okay. We don't have socialized medicine here, which is one of these things. Like when you do have socialized medicine, you get these kind of interventions into people's health. Well, we're paying for it. So therefore, we don't have that. So let her rip, yes, there'll be some cost associated with it, but there's nothing at this point that we can do. We cannot force people into getting vaccines, so they're just going to have to deal with the consequences.
And the cost might actually help get them vaccinated. That people might observe carnage around them, and we're seeing that in some of the southern states, a big uptick in applications for vaccination. I think the perspective that most makes sense to me is that people want to get back to their lives, and that I totally understand and sympathize with. And most people don't like living in an emergency, and it's a terrible thing for society. It's a terrible thing for kids to be kept at home and not really engage one another or be educated properly. It's isolating all the bad trends in our culture, which come from being alone in front of a fucking laptop or a phone, not connected with our neighbors, not connected with community, becoming depressed, doing all this stuff is made much worse by the discipline required for an epidemic. Now, I support that discipline. I was super careful, wore a mask all the time, almost never went anywhere, et cetera, et cetera. But once the vaccine happened, I want to get back to reality.